Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and as always, by my good friend, my business partner, the dear Mr. Jason Neil Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen, wearing his favorite orange Hawaiian shirt.
There you go. Is it Hawaiian? What makes Hawaiian shirts Hawaiian? I feel like big tropical flowers. This feels a bit more, I don't know, a bit more trim, a bit more wilderness. I have no idea.
Oh, it looked kind of leafy, you know? It looked kind of semi-festive.
That's why I'm curious what makes it Hawaiian, right? I don't know. It's above my pay grade. We're in the business of selling whiskey. We are not in the business of selling shirts, thankfully.
See, I could be lying to our listeners and telling people you got lays around your neck, you have hula dancers behind you, and, you know, create all sorts of stereotypes having to do with Hawaii.
Even for the viewers, I could have a grass skirt on below this desk, but, you know, that's for me to know and you to never find out. We are. It's as simple as that.
You know what I discovered this week, Jason?
Go on.
I made a grand discovery. This was just yesterday. I made a grand discovery that in the year 1982, unlike every American on the face of this earth, you did not know about Kenny Rogers' blockbuster film Six Pack.
I desperately want to hear from our listeners on this one. Like, how many of our listeners absolutely are familiar with the 1982 Kenny Rogers vehicle Six Pack? I will officially go on record. I said the same thing to you when you sent me the link. It looks amazing. Right. And I'm bitterly disappointed. I only learned about it in the year 2025. But holy moly, yeah. If listeners, you know, depending which part of the world you're in, do you know Six Pack, the movie with Kenny Rogers?
Right.
Gosh. You were saying it was on rotation in America in the 1980s. It was just, you were saying HBO would put it on.
Yeah, I feel like regularly? It was totally. HBO had a bunch of movies that were on rotation. It was Six Pack. It was On Golden Pond. It was
these two things are not like the other.
Right? It was not like the other. And then you had Cinemax
and Six Pack.
And then you had Cinemax, which had Lady Chatterley's Lover, which was on rotation. Right. Very different movie as well.
Wow, those are some wild rotations across the channels. Gosh.
Yeah. Or the toy or Kidco. Do you remember Kidco? Did you have Kidco?
No, not Kidco, but you had me at the toy. All Richard Pryor movies came to Scotland. So Stir Crazy was one of the first ones I saw. The toy Brewster's Millions was phenomenal, where he has to lose $30 million in 30 days. It was such a good premise for a kid to watch. Oh, that would be easy. I could do that in a day. Right. And then you get to see him struggle with that. So the toy, that's Jackie Gleason in the role there. Jackie Gleason's the dad of the son who gets Richard Pryor as a toy. I
don't think that would work these days. Yeah,
questionable in 2025. Probably highly questionable when they made it, in all honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Richard Pryor, though, he needed the money, so he needed the job.
You know what? I think I remember watching a conversation with Gene Wilder and him talking about making Blazing Saddles with obviously it wasn't Richard Pryor's, but it was Levon. Oh, geez, Levon Stevens, I think was his last name.
That's the sheriff you're talking about?
The sheriff, yeah. I apologize about his last name. And he talks about, you know, they're using the N-word left and right and right and left. And Gene takes him to the side and he says, you know, this is bad. This is terrible. And I really apologize that, you know, is this difficult? And And he talks about the importance that we're really highlighting how terrible these people are. And I know that Richard Pryor has talked about highlighting the stupidity of racism using entertainment to highlight racism, just like Carol O'Connor in All in the Family, playing like the ultimate bigot. He even made a commercial back when, at the height of the popularity of that show, he made a commercial saying, look, this is a character. This is a character poking fun at bigots. I'm not him. You are not meant to be this person. So I think it's sort of important that, this is poking fun at bigotry. And so, hopefully that's a takeaway from that.
So back to where we started with Six Pack.
Yeah.
When did you last watch that movie in its entirety?
Oh, Jeepers Creepers. I'll tell you what, I'm sure it was in the 80s. I'm sure it had to have been in the 80s. I remember the one scene, they kept on having him like run up and down the stairs of the stadium. And then they had him doing sit-ups and he was just, out of shape Kenny Rogers. And they had to steal like a vehicle or something like that. That's all I really remember of it.
Well, hopefully before too many more episodes pass, I will have an opportunity to say I have now seen it in its entirety, but that is not true this day. I will have to look forward to that.
Yeah.
But what brings us here today, aside from Kenny Rogers' 1982 vehicle Six Pack?
Kenny Rogers Roasters. So today today I'm having a conversation around cigars and actually yet another cigar project with Aganorsa Leaf. And this is not our first project, right? I said yet another. We've done a few projects before with Aganorsa Leaf where we've sent them casks, ex-casks, right? We've sent them an ex-bourbon cask. We sent them an ex-rye cask, and they would extra mature their cigars in those casks. And they have a very special process in which they do that. And then they would put a single cask nation, what do they call those? The rings on the band.
Cigar band.
Cigar band. And it was a collaborative effort, right? And, this isn't flavored cigars by any stretch. This is right. This is cask aged, but it's done in a different way. A lot of brands that do sort of cask aging of tobacco, they actually will do the raw tobacco, where Aganorsa have a process where they first create the cigar itself and then put the whole cigar within the wet cask. And for a very short period of time. And cigars like a sponge, right? And then they test it. They test the sticks and see how much flavor we've got going on. And this time around, we've used the Balcones that we've done, the most recent Balcones that we've done. So this time it's an American single malt, but an ex-peated American single malt.
Yeah, so it's different style for sure. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what our Cigar Czar Yoni Miller has to say on this very subject. I'm also curious, you're talking about them making the cigars and then they load the cask. Are they putting each individual cigar through the bunghole, letting them pile up, and then when they take them out, it's like, do you remember trying to empty a piggy bank when you were a youngster? You had to hold it upside down and you had to like pry out the pennies and the coins. Is that how they get the cigars back out of the cask?
It's like, do you remember the old sort of penny piggy banks where you would retract the little dog and you'd put the penny in it and then you'd press the button and then the dog would go boom and they would drop the penny in?
So it's so funny that that's your go-to. I had one that would be your absolute go-to, which was a coffin, and you put the penny on the button, and a skeletal hand came out the coffin, grabbed the penny, and dragged it back in. 100% your speed, 100% not my speed.
Wow. Oh, we should have switched. I wish I'd known you when we were kids.
One with a stupid dog on it.
So no, that would be terrible. That's like, I remember having an acoustic guitar growing up, and you drop a pick in there and you try to get it out. And just like,
100%. Yeah, 100%. Just imagine them getting the sticks out the exact same way from the cask.
No. So, I mean, we'll talk about it in the conversation, but you've got to open up that cask to really, because we're dealing with thousands of sticks here. We're dealing with thousands of cigars. So you've got to open up the cask to make this happen, and do it in batches, of course.
I refuse to believe you. I don't care what gets said in this next interview. I refuse to believe this.
And in Aganorsa, it's I don't know how many of our listeners. I imagine a good number of our listeners are cigar smokers, because I think there's a lot of crossover between whiskey drinkers and cigar smokers.
The Zooms from time to time, yeah. We get cigar smokers showing up in the Zooms that we've been doing.
And are you a cigar smoker? You're not you used to be.
No. Yeah, I gave it up. Walked away.
But Aganorsa is sort of famously, they really stick with Nicaraguan tobacco. So a bit heavier, a bit spicier in style, but it can vary, of course, right? And where was I going with that? Yeah. Anyway, I think with their Nicaraguan wrapper. Oh, that's where I was going with it. They're using Nicaraguan wrapper, but between the different ring gauges and the different lengths and the different presses. Like last time they used a box press, right? These different gauges, these different box presses sort of determine the draw that you'll get from the cigar. It can determine sort of the weight of the smoke and all that. I'm starting to get into territory.
It does. I feel like I'm in the interview right now. I feel like our cigars are to cover all of this.
And like I'm really not an expert. Like Yoni is the cigar czar. Like you and I think we are well versed in whiskey. Yoni is well versed in cigar, and rather than me try to wear the expert hat, I think it's probably good for us to hand over the conversation to Aganorsa and to Yoni, right?
100%.
So Terence Reilly and Yoni, Cigar Czar, tobacco troublemaker, the Meme-Meiser, welcome to One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I really appreciate both of you joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to be on.
Yeah, I see Yoni. You're sitting in the you're sitting outside smoking a cigar, enjoying some whiskey.
Great American.
Not a bad day.
And the police are out there. I hear the sirens, so I hope you're keeping safe here. So we're here. We're discussing what I think. I want to make sure I've got my count right, because we've got, we started our relationship with you, Terence.
19.
Was it just before COVID? Was it during COVID? Yeah, it was 2019, right?
2019. Yeah, 2019 was the first. We've done three.
Okay, three. Oh, three previous. So this is our fourth?
Yeah, this will be the fourth.
Oh, man. Okay. So Jason and I had our counts wrong. And so I'm going to blame COVID. Anytime some count is wrong, that's the easy out, right? You just blame COVID and you're free and clear. So we're going to blame COVID. So firstly, it's been great. Here we are. We're 2019. We're now in our fourth collaboration together. And I know, in the past we've done a rye barrel with you. We've done a bourbon barrel with you. This time around, we have this peated cask, this Balcones peated American single malt. And I want to get into, sort of the nitty gritty of all that. And I want to get into the process, but, I'm really cognizant of our listenership. And, we know our listeners for the most part are really, they're whiskey geeks first and foremost, and they may be cigar adjacent. And so what I want to do first is I want to get our listeners a bit more comfortable with Aganorsa Leaf, with who you are, what you guys do, what you have been doing, and sort of your ethos. And then we can slip in, a bit closer to some of the projects that we've done, and then the projects that we're about to do. So can you give us a little bit of a history, Terence, of who you are, what Aganorsa Leaf does, where you do it, how you do it? The tobacco you use, like let's get deep, let's get geeky, because that's where our listeners live. Like, do not spare a detail, please.
Oh, good. Wow. Yeah, I hope you freed up the afternoon. So I got a long. I can go on for a long time. So, Aganorsa is one of the largest growers of tobacco in Nicaragua, and the story of how Aganorsa came about is interesting, because it's in some ways similar to other stories you hear from the cigar industry, and then it's unique in others. It's similar in the sense that the owner is a man named Eduardo Fernandez. He's Cuban. There's a lot of those guys in the business. His family left Cuba after they very generously donated all their property to Castro in the early 1960s. A lot of people did that. He grew up in South Florida. A lot of people, a lot of the Cuban population did that left after Castro. So in that sense, it's kind of a similar story to a lot of people, but that's where it ends. His family was not into tobacco or farming or anything like that, agriculture. He ended up going to Wharton School of Business. He graduated. He was a banker in Miami. And in the 80s, he and his brother went to Spain. They saw how like Domino's and Little Caesars and delivery pizza was becoming a super popular thing in the United States. He took that model to Spain, and he created a business called Telepizza, and that business became very successful. They went from like 1 to like 60 locations in like 5 years or something like that. It was a really breakneck speed. They sold the business off for a potload of money. And at that point, they could kind of do whatever they wanted to, because they were at a place where, money was no longer really an obstacle. And in the case of Eduardo, he always loved farming. He loves agriculture. Really, that's what he loves to this day. He likes being on the farms. He likes seeing that part of it. Doesn't really like all being out there that much. He's a reserved person, very, very quiet. Very interesting, highly intelligent, but he's not the type of guy that's going to be out there on covers of magazines and all that kind of stuff. And so he started growing tobacco in Nicaragua, along with other things. He has pig farms, he has cattle farms. Aganorsa Leaf. Aganorsa is an acronym. It means, if you think Aganorsa is hard to say, it stands for Agrícola Ganadera Norteña S.A., which basically means Nicaraguan Farming and Ranching Company. And so that's how it started, just all sorts of different agricultural products. On the tobacco side, because he didn't have the experience, he went to Cuba, and he brought back Cuban agronomists who had worked for Cuba Tobacco, in some cases for half a century, and they were kind of retired because they weren't party members. So once you get to a certain level in the Cuban, any job in Cuba, you basically you have to be a party member after a certain point, or they don't want you to have those types of positions. So these guys were all very successful. Had been in charge of high levels of Cuba Tobacco, the state company, but they had reached a certain stage, and they were like, okay, well, thanks a lot, you're kind of retired. So they were kind of on the sideline because they couldn't be party members. And the reason they couldn't be party members is when you go to join the Communist Party, there's a questionnaire with a bazillion questions on it of all sorts of different, opinions they want to get from you before they let you be a member. And one of the questions is, do you believe in God? And the correct answer in a communist country is no. And they would say yes, and they'd go, okay, well, come back next year, and they couldn't become members. So they were these guys that just had this wealth of knowledge of growing Cuban tobacco. In most cases during Cuba's heyday, going back to in some cases even the 50s, pre Castro. And just weren't doing anything. So basically, we sell tobacco to people over the years. Fuente, J.C. Newman, Padron, the people that make Romeo and Juliet and Monte Cristo, Drew Estate. So all these different companies, we sell tobacco to them. We make cigars for other companies, Illusion, Warped, Viaje, and then we have our own brands. And so. Our business obviously is overall one of the largest in the business because of the growing operation, and we have 2 factories and then the distribution.
Yeah, that's it's interesting, in the Scotch whiskey business, and here we are, a whiskey podcast, but I'm going to use Scotch whiskey as sort of the signpost anytime I talk about whiskey here. When I think about Scotch whiskey, the biggest selling item is blended Scotch whiskey. So if you're a Johnny Walker or a Dewar's or Chivas or insert blend here, it's no secret that your brand sources whiskey from this distillery, that distillery, and so on. And because you source from various distilleries that are owned by other companies, it makes your brand better or your particular blend better, right? And so I love hearing that. I love hearing the transparency that you say, oh, we grow tobacco for these other blends. So that's not an uncommon thing for this sort of transparency within the cigar industry?
Yeah, so it's a little. Some are more secretive about it than others. I would say that we are certainly are not. We're very proud of the people we work with, and we kind of feel rising tide raises all ships. If they like the product that uses our tobacco, that's good for them and good for us. So we're very open about that, and there's no. The thing is the secrets. If somebody wants to go out there and to do the type of investment and get the experience and knowledge to do what we do, God bless them, because it's very hard. Growing tobacco is the joke is you want to make $1 million and start with 2, because it's a labor intensive. Your money's always tied up. It takes 75 days from seed to harvest. Then you're talking another 40 days, 45 days in the curing barn where it changes colors from the green to the brown. You go into fermentation. That can take 6 months to years. Then you go to aging, which is years. So you're talking, 3-4 years minimum before anything gets sold or touched or anything like that or utilized. And that's a huge cost. So for us, we're kind of like, we work with these guys. We work with those guys. Other people, sometimes they get a little, quiet about it. They won't mention it, or they'll be more secretive about it. They won't go out of their way. They'll admit it's true, but they won't tell you if you don't ask. So it just depends on the company and kind of how they see, the security of their position. I guess.
Yoni, I want to bring you in a second. Well, if you have something to add here, please add it here. I've got a question for you.
No problem. So the way I view Aganorsa, and I've always told people about this, about, our project and who they are, I call them the MGP of the cigar world. That's exactly who they are. If you think about just the synonymous of what they do, there's contracts out there that other people use them for. They have their own stuff. They're very transparent with what they do. But the reason, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, again, why it's so unique and powerful of our project working with Aganorsa and Terence and the team is that, we have the creme de la creme. Like when I first met Terence and all that, it was just the opportunity was unbelievable. I mean, think about it. We have arguably one of the best tobacco brands out there doing our project. And as we know, and we can get into this obviously, and all the jokes, just getting on the schedule to work with Aganorsa is labor intensive. That's why whenever we do these projects, as soon as we're done with it, I already have to start thinking about the next one, thinking, all right, I'm going to annoy Terence about 10 months ahead, get everyone's buy-in to the project. So therefore I can get on the schedule on that specific time, because therefore I know I can focus this time on that. Because anything else, it's crazy. The amount they produce of great quality stuff, and I smoke a ton of their stuff, other brands as well, is unbelievable. So yeah, it's pretty powerful to have a brand like Aganorsa working with us.
So I love this, right? This idea of the MGP of cigars, of tobacco. So if another brand is coming to you, are they saying, hey, are they coming at you and saying, I need such and such tobacco at such and such an age? Like, can we talk about, you mentioned aging the tobacco. Like, could we talk about that process and how that affects the tobacco and how you do that?
Yes. So just to go back to the whole process again and break it down a little slower. So you have the growing phase, obviously. So that's where you have, they plant it, they harvest it. 75 days later, now you have the raw leaf. From there, they hang it in those curing barns, which in Connecticut you can still see a few of them. Where they put the leaf up to dry. During that's called curing. During that process, it's about 45 days. The leaf changes from green to brown during that time. And then after the curing process, you go into fermentation. And fermentation involves basically it's like a compost heap. It's called a pilon, and they stack tobacco on top of each other. And that naturally heats up. And that heat produces fermentation, which it removes the impurities, the ammonias, the stuff that you don't want in the tobacco. And that goes on for a while. That goes on 6 months plus. It can go, depending on the type of tobacco or the part of the plant it's on. It can go close to 2 years sometimes. And that's the fermentation process is kind of like the carving process. So you're carving a piece of wood. And then aging is sanding. It just gets off the little edges. It lets it rest. It lets it develop much the same way that a wine or maybe even spirits to some degree, it doesn't mean it's bad if you have the bourbon at 3 years, but when it's at 6, it's going to be different than it was at 3. So with that aging. And so for cigars, it's kind of the same thing. That age kind of lets the tobacco settle, lets it develop nuance, brings out some characteristic that won't be there, fresh off the fermentation pile. And that's really how you break it down. So when people come to us, sometimes they want completed leaf. They go in and they pick out bales. They open the bale up. When you age it, you put them in these burlap sacks for storage. And so they'll come in the warehouse and they'll open them up and they'll try different tobaccos and see what they like. And they'll say, okay, give me 8 of those or 100 of these or 10 of these or whatever it is. They're, how much they're buying. And then some guys, they'll finish the tobacco themselves. So they'll buy it partially fermented, for instance, like it'll not be totally complete because they have their own kind of way they want to do it. And so sometimes they come in and they won't buy it where it's done. They'll have to take it back and then ferment it further.
Okay. And then how should I ask this question? Because this is sort of wild to me. From like you mentioned wine before, this is an agricultural product. When you think of wines, there are certain years that are simply better than others, right? Is the same ring true for cigars? And so as a grower, do you have certain harvests that work better than others? And then Yoni, I want to hand that off to you as an enthusiast, as someone who is likely a collector as well. Are there certain years that you look for as well? So I'd love to hear from both perspectives.
Yeah, so you touch on really like one of the most challenging aspects of cigars. So for instance, like you said, a wine, if I give you a bottle of wine and you're like, I just didn't like this as much as the last one, I go, well, that's the 2014. You like the 2012 or whatever it is. And you accept that as an answer. You go, oh, yeah, I like the 12 vintage more than the 14. For cigars, is generally speaking, with a few exceptions, is not a vintage product. It's not. It doesn't classify by years. And it's a solid, not a liquid. So you've got to produce consistency in a solid handmade product. That crop years vary. You're right. I mean, absolutely. So some years are better than others. Some years, not even in terms of better, but just simply develop a different taste because of more rain or more sunshine or whatever it is, less or less of those qualities. So what you do kind of is you have to have large inventories. And what you do if a cigar, let's say a cigar you really enjoy uses 2 leaves of a 2015 tobacco, for just the sake of argument. Well, you've got to have enough of that tobacco to last a long time. But no matter how much you have, eventually it's going to run out. So what you start doing is when the 16 crop comes along, you start comparing it. Is it the same? If it's the same, great. If it's not, now I hold off to the 17. Now the 17 comes along. Okay, that crop is more similar. You can work with it. And then what you do is the 17, it's a half leaf, and then 1.5 leaves of the 15. And then it's one of the 15, one of the 17. And then it's, half of the 15 and 3. And so any change is very gradual and subtle over time. And that's really where the skill comes in. If you could take a monkey and it could pick out enough leaves to make a good cigar eventually. I mean, anybody can make one good cigar, really. The challenge is doing that on scale because exactly to your point, some crop years are better than others. Sometimes the yields are more, sometimes they're less. So you're dealing with all these different factors that you really have no control over, and then you're trying to make sure that the product comes out the same every time, which again, wine is a liquid. It's easier to blend a liquid than a solid. And they do it by year so that if you can accept, I don't like that year, I like this year. Cigars, that's not an acceptable answer to a cigar smoker. What do you mean it was last year? Like, this is my cigar. I want it to taste the same. Like, they don't care.
Isn't it crazy the way he's speaking about cigars is exactly the way we speak about blends of whiskey, about how blenders do. It's identical. It's literally identical. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And Terence didn't know he was the comparison, but it's right there. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. And then back to blends. Well, before I go to that, Yoni, is there anything that you wanted to add just from, an enthusiast's perspective?
So Terence hits it on the head, right? So you're smoking cigars, you like a certain brand, you like a certain thing, right? And the point is consistency, right? If I love a certain cigar, right, name whatever brand Aganorsa makes, right? I want consistency from year to year, right? And we will look at your specs, right? So, correct me if I'm wrong, Terence, right? Aganorsa has the Criollo 98, right? And there's another varietal seed you guys use, talking about vintages and seed varietals to try to keep consistent year after year. But tobacco is an interesting product, right? Not every leaf grown that vintage, or we'll use the word vintage here, right, is going to be the same exact thing. And that's just normal, right? So as Terence mentioned, as we know as whiskey drinkers, right, that a blend wants to stay consistent, but if you do a snapshot of and we've done this before, right, an old Johnny Walker Red back in, let's say, years ago to now, forgetting the fact that obviously the blend itself is very different to makeup. It's 2 different whiskeys, right? And that's a snapshot from 30 years, in time. You'll find the same exact thing, obviously, with tobacco. If I take Aganorsa's first, line that Terence did back in 2018 and do it now to 2025, it's impossible to keep it identical. It's pretty close, but it'll, and that's the whole problem, right? Not the problem, but I will use problem as air quotes, right? But it'll be different. And so that's why if you're in love with a cigar, you smoke it every year. The goal is for me not to notice the changes. But, I like to age some cigars. As some of us know, you keep a cigar box or a couple cigars at the back of the humidor or in your Tupperware. You pull it out 3 years later, you're just like, oh, shit, I have this nice cigar. And so it's and then you'll notice a massive difference in that change. And and that's the beauty about this product. It's evergreen. It's always changing. So as an enthusiast, yes, you always want to keep consistency and have that box and all there. But, at the end of the day, I always judge, and a lot of people do it. Do you like the cigar? Yes or no? And if not, if yes, why? You go down the rabbit hole. And if no, change your palate, or things have changed, and that's it. But yeah.
Yeah. Terence or Yoni or both, how would you describe Nicaraguan tobacco if it had a specific flavor profile?
So Nicaragua, you can talk a little bit more about like having a profile to it, because Nicaragua, you can make a cigar entirely of tobacco from Nicaragua. Not every country can you do that in, and even like, for instance, Dominican Republic, where there's all Dominican cigars. Dominican Republic tends to utilize more outside tobacco more, especially for wrappers. So there's less of a consistent profile in some other countries as there is in, for instance, Cuba and then Nicaragua. So Nicaragua, I would say, tends to be a stronger, pound for pound. Like the leaves have more kick to them. They because of the volcanic soil, you get a lot of times more body, more of an earthy, gritty flavor to them. You get like I always say that like Nicaraguan tobacco is kind of like is more like a bourbon than a Scotch. It's like it's heavier, it's meatier, it kind of has a little bit more. Like most people, I think, if you're starting off you guys would be more of an expert on this, but like if you have like Johnny Black, or you have Glenlivet, it's an easy entrance into the world of spirits. Whereas a Booker's would maybe, turn people off, if it's your first time around the block, And so Nicaraguan cigars tend to be less for a novice. They tend to be more for an experienced consumer, because they tend to be stronger. They tend to have more body and more kick to them, more nicotine. So some growers in factories are kind of like that. Like they'll have tobacco that they grow, tobacco that are they buy from all different types of places, and you can kind of go and get totally different styles of cigars with different all over the place, the full spectrum. Aganorsa is more like a whiskey bar where there's all different types of whiskey, obviously. But if I have a whiskey you've never had before and I say, would you like to try this whiskey? It's not going to taste like gin. You know what you're getting into, because there's certain qualities that a whiskey, whether it's a Scotch or whatever, will have, regardless of what brand or distillery or anything else it's from. And so Aganorsa is a little bit more like that, because we use almost exclusively our tobacco. We do have to get some Maduro and our Connecticut shades from other places. But for the most part, even the wrappers are all our tobacco, and they're from two seed varietals, Corojo 99, which is a Cuban seed varietal, and Criollo 98, which is also a Cuban seed varietal. And Corojo 99, we're the only major growers of it left in the world. Like nobody grows on any scale because it has a poor yield. And a lot, people forget this is a business. At the end of the day, like the tomatoes at the grocery store aren't there because they were the most flavorful. They had the best yield. They didn't ripen too fast or bruise too easily, so they could ship them from Florida to Connecticut or New Jersey or New York or wherever it is and make more money. And that's how it works. It doesn't mean they're bad. Obviously, they can't taste awful, because that's going to be a problem as well. But it's not just about like growing the most flavorful tomatoes, and the same goes for tobacco. Corojo 99, we love that flavor and aroma, but it doesn't have the yield, and it's more susceptible to disease than a lot of other tobaccos that are out there. So people don't grow it anymore, but we love that flavor, so we grow it. So all our cigars will have Corojo 99 in them. All our cigars will have Criollo 98, and really from the regions of Jalapa and Esteli, for sure. So within that, there's all different types of expressions of Aganorsa. There's different farms. There's different parts of the plant. There's all different factors, obviously. Just like, every bourbon, it's got 50% corn in it. It uses a virgin white oak barrel. It's aged 3 years. There's certain things that every single bourbon will have. But there's all different types. So there's pros and cons to this. Like for us, the benefit is that if you like what we do, you have a comfort level with anything we do, because it's not going to taste radically, it's not going to taste like gin if you like bourbon, the downside is if you want gin, we don't have it. So if you like what we do, you're going to come to us because we're the only ones that do it. If you don't like what we do, you're not going to really like anything we do because there's definitely some commonalities among our products.
Gotcha. One last question before we go into the ins and outs of our projects, which I love that you've got the box. I've got one of my old boxes here. I've got my stick sitting in my humidor, so this one's empty. But and the cedar smells great. Anyway, with a cigar, you've got the fill, you've got the binder, you've got the wrapper. Can we talk about those components, what they do from a flavor standpoint? And then I remember last year as well, maybe not last year, I apologize. The last project that we did, Yoni really pushed for a box press. And that was if I remember correctly, from a draw perspective. So, I love Yoni's shake of the head, like, Hatton got it wrong. Okay. So let's talk about those, elements of the cigar and then talk too about, what you could be doing to that cigar as well. Box press being one of those elements.
Yeah, so it's great questions. So the cigar, the components, as you mentioned, fillers, which are the inside, the tobacco. When you take a cigar and you look down the middle of it, like as if you were through a telescope, the tobacco in the middle there is your filler. Around that, they wrap a binder, which a binder is basically an ugly wrapper. It's kind of beat up a little bit. It's kind of, it doesn't have to look nice or anything like that. It just has to hold the inside in there. And then you have the wrapper itself, which the wrapper has multiple purposes. And what I'll say now is slightly controversial because there's a lot of arguing about this in the business, but I'll give you my perspective. The wrapper's importance is also because of its aesthetics. It's got to look nice. If the wrapper looks beat up, you're like, oh, that can't be a good cigar. So the wrapper has to look nice on top of having the flavor that combines with the other parts of the cigar. So the wrapper is always the most expensive part of the plant. Some people will tell you that the wrapper is the most flavorful and the most flavor comes out of the wrapper on a cigar. That is, in my opinion, not true. That is something that, I don't know, people started saying years ago. You can make any tobacco in a cigar stand out by, how you blend it. The traditional method of blending was the wrapper was purely aesthetic. It was really meant to be kind of neutral in taste and let the fillers and binders stand out, and it was meant to look nice. If you look at like Davidoff back in the day, and the old school way was the wrapper was not really meant to be the part that would stand out in terms of the taste. The more modern way is that the wrapper becomes more of the focus of the blend in terms of the taste profile, which you can do by focusing on making that taste stand out in the blend. But fundamentally, a wrapper is the same tobacco as the binder and filler. It just looks nicer. It's all they pick the leaf, they look at it, they go, okay, this is perfect. This is wrapper. It's not too thick. It's not too thin. Uniform in color. Uniform. Not too veiny. That could be wrapper. This one's a little beat up. This is binder, and this. But the tobacco when it's growing doesn't say, "Oh, I'm going to be a wrapper, so I got to taste this way or that way." Like, it doesn't know what it is. It's all the integrity of the leaf that determines that. So the idea that like on a cigar that the wrapper fundamentally is going to have more of the flavor is scientifically impossible. It doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of the different strategies in terms of coming up with a blend. How do you want the blend? Do you want the blend to be an overall balance? Do you want the wrapper to stand out? What's going to be driving the blend is the fillers. Those are all questions that the person creating the cigar determines when they're making it, or they might not even know. A lot of people go, "I like blend C," and they don't know why they like it. They just that's the one that they want to go with for their project. So it's at the end of the day, it just as long as it tastes the way you want it to, it doesn't really matter what's doing what. It's you enjoyed the product. In terms of sizes, that's another factor. Obviously, is you have box pressing, which box pressing does a couple of things. One, it keeps the cigar from rolling off the table. That helps. They basically put the cigar into a press, so it will be a square in appearance rather than round. But it also has the impact that because you're pressing it, you have to put less tobacco in it in the filler. So you get more of the wrapper filler ratio changes because it's the same size but with less filler. So you're going to have an impact on flavor in that regard because now you're changing the ratios of the tobaccos being used. So that has an impact. And then again, there's whether it's a torpedo or a perfecto, cigars that taper either on one end or both, that's going to change flavor because you're going from a very small ring size to an expansion of that's double or triple the size sometimes. So all that stuff will impact the flavor. Ultimately, what I always say when it comes to cigars is find what you like. You're the only expert. Yeah. You can't let people tell you what is good or not good. You have to go out there, find something you like, enjoy it, and then experiment to see what else there is out there. And that's the fun part. People all the time will say like, "Oh, I'm not an expert," or "I really don't know." It's like, well, you know what you like, don't you? Well, yeah, I know what I like. Okay, well, then you're an expert on your own taste, and that's really all you need to do. Now, again, if you're new to cigars, do you need to have a $500 Davidoff Oro Blanco as your first cigar? Probably not. I don't think you're going to probably enjoy that as much as somebody with experience will enjoy it. But still, at the end of the day, it just comes down to taste.
Yeah. So, Yoni, as our in-house Cigar Czar, you really pushed for the box press the last go around. Why did you go for that? Was it simply an aesthetic thing? Did you want it to stand out as different from the previous versions? Were you looking for a different flavor that you thought would go with that cask? Was it a collaboration with Terence? I don't remember. And I just, Jason and I leave this with you because you're the smart guy here. We're not the smart guys here.
Yeah, no. So as a cigar smoker, it's all for me, right? There are various elements. Everyone has their own different profile. People hate Lanceros, love Lanceros, which is a long, thin cigar. Some people love, the massive Gigante, which is called a lunatic by Aganorsa. That's massive ring gauge that your jaw probably hurts afterwards. People love the heft of it. And it does very well with certain people. So for me, my profile, and again, this goes back to I think a lot of whiskey blenders or cigar, blenders as well. You make what you like. So my personal preference is a box press because one, it feels awesome in your mouth. It's easy, to heft on. It's not too small. It's definitely not too big. It's the right size. That's one. And two is that the way it's the mouthfeel also, the way the way the smoke interacts with your mouth and the way how much smoke you actually get in is awesome. It's a creamier feel, in my opinion. The airflow, the combustion, which is another thing also, which when it comes to various sizes, some sizes combust better than others. Some, and because it's all like, it's amazing what goes on, right? Some you smoke it too fast. You can call tunneling. You can get certain aspects there. With the box press, I'm a slow smoker, and it works, and it just lengthens the experience for me, right? And then on top of that, it's just the way it feels in my mouth. So there's a couple of things that go into it. So it had nothing to do with which barrel we were picking, and nothing to do with the blend. I just thought, hey, if I have control of this project, I'm going to push for something that I really enjoy. And I know other people enjoy well, and the box press is just awesome. I think this year's project, which we'll get into, I think we've discussed. Well, I think briefly we've discussed certain things, but yeah, no, I love a box press feel in the way it smokes and the way it feels in the mouth. Absolutely.
One last thing for you, Yoni, before we go into this project. When I first got into whiskey, I said, "Ooh, I drink this. I like this. There's a smoky whiskey that tastes smoky. I like a smoky thing. I drank this that tastes sweet. I like sweet things." And then I had a Glenmorangie Nectar D'Or, and I tasted that, and I just drank it a different way. I let the whiskey sit in my mouth a certain way and roll across my tongue a certain way, and then flavors started to pop. I got apricots, I got toasted walnuts, I got all of these flavors that I hadn't gotten before, and it was a fluke. And it was that whiskey that had me discover other whiskeys in ways I hadn't discovered before. And it was an absolute aha moment. And I wonder for you as a cigar smoker, if you've had that moment in cigars, and what was that for you? How did you discover flavors in cigars? And I wonder if you could share that with the listeners and with the viewers.
Yeah, sure. So the journey, and I think Terence and I have discussed this in the past, but and I think it's spoken to everybody in the industry. The journey of a cigar smoker is very interesting, right? Terence mentioned it. If you're a new novice and you're going right to the Oro Blanco, which is an incredible experience, I've been blessed to have that cigar twice. It's an unbelievable thing, but you don't know how to smoke it. So
this is that
really,
$500.
It's a $500 plus. Now it's $800 cigar with the second iteration. It's wild.
Okay.
It's a story behind it. Fine.
Okay.
For another podcast. But the way a cigar smoker trajectory usually works is that you're smoking Philly blunts or White Owls or the machine made cigars, because one, you have no idea what you're smoking. It's available in your gas station, in your bodega, in your low end store. You're smoking whatever they're telling you, whatever's accessible. You're like, oh, cool, I'm smoking a cigar. That's usually your first iteration to it. You're not going straight to Cubans. And if you are, it's like you're not going with the progression. So my first iteration, actually, and I'll give him a shout out, is a store that no longer exists called De La Concha, which Terence back in the day for sure has been there a couple of times, right in the city. And really, when you go to a tobacconist versus a regular individual, they're like the retailer, or they're your guru and your shepherd throughout your journey. Because, hey, try this cigar. And if you go to any cigar event, hey, try this cigar. So if you're really into cigars and you like what you're tasting, and you like what you're seeing, you like a certain profile, like, for example, still people today love to this day, I think even you and a bunch of my friends who smoke cigars love flavored tobacco, right? So they'll smoke acids, they'll smoke cigars with flavors in them. And then you kind of go on this massive trajectory of like, I don't like flavored tobacco. There's a little artificialness there potentially that doesn't meet my palate. I'm going to go more into the deep end of just flavored tobacco. And that's fine, but everyone goes through that journey. So my personal journey was, like a lot of people, you smoke kind of the machine-made stuff. You're thinking whatever. You're smoking the tips. You don't know what a black and mild is. That's pipe tobacco, not cigar tobacco. And you learn all this stuff as you're going along. And Philly blunts are really heavily flavored for the right reasons. The wrapper, whatever they're using, is the flavor, and the filler binder are just junk, because most people dump it down. They put other stuff in there. And so you go on this trajectory. So, I happened upon Aganorsa, right? It was in pre-Terence. I knew about it before he joined the company. I smoked my first Padron. That was given to me. I smoked the first 1000 series. You and I, it's another story how you and I met. Our first bonding was over, I smoked, when you were first just reviewing whiskeys, I paired the 1968 Glenfarclas with a 1923 short Padron that was given me by a Davidoff by there. So the journey of a cigar smoker, everyone has their own journey of how they got to where they end up today. But it always starts off like just being a sponge. And then you find out what flavors you like and you gravitate towards it. Some people despise Nicaraguan tobacco and they love Dominican tobacco. Some people only smoke Cubans. Another conversation for another time, because to me, Cuban tobacco is inconsistent. But again, like for everybody, you're on this trajectory. And even now, as you get older, and we know this, right? Certain whiskeys that you tend towards today, you may not have liked before, and you may not like in the future. Your palate's constantly changing a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm sure there's a scientific aspect there. But yeah, the flavor profile of tobacco and my specific journey is still evergreen and still ever changing.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Okay, let's shift gears, because I realize I'm looking at the clock here, and I told you guys that I wanted you for an hour, and
well, Terence really suck up a half hour, with all the.
But let's talk about this project. Before the three of us hopped on, Jason and I were talking about, how does Aganorsa do it? And Jason had laughed. He said, do they just drop them into the bung one by one? And do they, lift them and shake them out one by one? Like if you drop your guitar pick in an acoustic guitar, something like that. And I said, oh no, they don't do that. And then before we recorded, Terence sort of clued me in and said, well, with this one, we may actually do something sort of like that. So let's talk about how are we going to work these cigars with this cask, and how is your process in infusing some of these whiskey flavors into your tobacco? How does it differ from what others may do, to your knowledge?
So before Terence answered that, do you want to know the history of how we got here? Would that be interesting?
That, you know what, Yoni?
I'll start there, and then I'll tee Terence up to answer all those questions, because it's very interesting the way he does it. Since I've been down there once or twice to see what he's doing, and I'm dying to know how he's going to do this project. But just so listeners know, and all that, I'll give a 2-minute quick history of how this all came about. I met Terence, it's got to be around 2012 or maybe 2011, years ago. And we kept in touch like anything. Like if you're into it, like I'm sure people meet you on the road, Joshua, right? People, periodically text you, hey, hello, and then you kind of see him at other events. And that's exactly how my relationship hit with Terence. So for a while, I've always done these pairings, right? The perfect pairing. And periodically, I would see other cigar companies, do a whiskey project. Oh, we finished it in the whiskey barrel, and then you never picked up any whiskey profile off the cigar, never. And there's a reason for that. One, I think it was a marketing gimmick, in my opinion. It wasn't done the right way. And it was more done for the cigar smoker and saying, hey, we used, I think my first exposure to a whiskey, actual whiskey one, there was a brand that used a peated barrel in their stuff, and you smoked the cigar. In my opinion, it wasn't a great cigar, and you didn't get any of the peat flavor from it. I've been dying to do this project or a project like this forever. So look around my friends in the industry. I'm like, we call Terence just out of left field. Hey, would this project ever interest you? He's like, sounds cool to me. Great. I went back to you, and for the listeners also, right? Every whiskey jubilee, at least here in New York, right? We would always have cigars, right? And I happened to be the cigar guy a couple of times. I helped get a certain people there, fine. And actually, a couple of times we've used Aganorsa for the whiskey jubilee. Great. So I said, you have any barrels lying around that we can use? Like, actually, we have this one barrel that we're not using again, and maybe we'll use it. I go, Terence, here's the project. Figure it out. Like, here's a barrel. We want a barrel, finish, age it, whatever the heck it is, you do it. So Terence's job, right, was to shop around the project itself, because, again, another conversation Terence can get into if he wants, right? Go find a retailer so we can sell it appropriately and do all the right things. And that's how he happened upon two guys. Two guys was very, very interested in this. Fine. And I'll tee it up here. So the first project, and I'll never forget this. I'm all excited. Like, we're all talking via email. All of us are on there. Barrel lands by Terence, and he's there, and he's like, does anyone have any idea how to open this goddamn thing? Right? I'm in the text message. It's like, what, do I go to the bung? What do I do? Like, if it's a top thing, I'm like, I don't know, like YouTube it, like go figure, like DIY. I don't know, take up the thing and you figure it out. So I remember this, and I'll leave it up to Terence. Terence, a couple of guys in the warehouse, they were Cuban. They're like, oh, we've done this before. They popped out the bung and they had it all set up for him. Like 10 minutes after we received that text, it's like, what do I do? And it's like, they figured it out. And after that, Terence was off to the races figuring out what to do. And I'll leave it at this. It was complete science at first. I think the first one took actually 3 months for us to agree on a blend. One, because he was aging. We didn't know how long to age the cigars in the barrel for. And we played with various things. And if you look at even in the podcast and the stuff we did before, the first batch we did was very whiskey forward, meaning that it was aged in there enough of a time where the whiskey was really influential in there. And we even dialed it back a lot. Could have been the barrel, could have been the way the first blend that we did, a whole slew of things. But I'll leave it up to Terence of how he did it, what he does, because it's very interesting. And I'll be honest, I've seen other people now do a barrel finish or aged cigar, and it's identical to what Terence did. Whether they copied us, who knows? Whether they figured out like Terence, who knows? But it's very interesting the way he's used this barrel to help finish the cigars. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Hand it off to Terence then. Yeah.
I had never done this before, so I didn't know what the heck I was doing, quite frankly. So I was kind of like, this is a cool idea. Let's have it work. I do know that some people will age some tobacco in the barrel itself. So like not the cigar, the tobacco. What we do is we take the complete cigar and put it into the barrel, and let it rest in there and take on the characteristics of the barrel. In the beginning, I really had no idea how to do that and how long. So the first samples, I think you could have gotten drunk off them. I mean, I left them in there for way too long. And by the time that, I got them out of there, they were like soaking in alcohol. I mean, it was like, in fact, everyone was like, yeah, I don't know if this project is going to work. If this is how they're going to, so we dialed it back. We did want on the first round of it to be a little bit more pronounced than usual, because one of the things is always like Jonathan was saying is that, I don't taste anything on this. We wanted people to know that we actually put it in a barrel and it got something out of that. So it did have a more pronounced impact, flavor than maybe we would have done otherwise. But it definitely set the tone for the project, because now people know we're really resting it in the barrel. Yeah. And then, after that, we got better at how long they have to sit in there for. Because once you pop the barrel, like, it starts to lose its potency over time. So it gets tricky in terms of doing the samples, and then samples, it's only a few cigars. Now you're putting in, about 100 cigars at a time to rest in the barrel, or so, 100 to 200. So now there's more cigars in there. The barrel has lost some of its original potency. So how long does it have to be in there? And you have to be really careful with it, because if you overdo it, then it ruins it, and then you have to start over. So every time we do this project, when we're done with it, I go, I'm never going to do this again, because I actually am heavily involved in making sure that the cigars come out when they're supposed to, putting them into the barrel. So I in a way that with nothing else that I do, am supervising the process to a much greater degree, which is time consuming. So but it's been a cool partnership. You guys are great to work with. You guys come up with some unique stuff that is just interesting in and of itself. This new one with American whiskey with peat. I've never even had something like that before. So, and then obviously Two Guys, our partners, is great. They make sure that the cigars go up and they sell out pretty quick on there. Thank God. So we've been lucky. Yeah.
So the fact that, each and every time you say, I'm never going to do this again, but yet you still do it. So thank you. Thank you so much. So, I don't know if there's certain aspects of this that you're not allowed to say. Is it a matter of you remove the cask end or the head, and then you sort of put this in trays, or are there aspects you don't want to talk about? Like,
no. So this one is this latest one actually has the bunghole, so that makes it like we can test out samples it's not sophisticated. We get a bag, we put some cigars into the bag, we get a rubber band and lower it in, and then put the bunghole back in. So that's been easier. On the past few ones we've done, we have to actually pop the barrel totally open, and then we cover it back up, and we put a plastic bag around it to cover it all in, so we lose it. But that definitely, once you crack that top, and again, forgive me if I'm not using the right nomenclature for these things. Once you do that, you're on the clock for how long that barrel is going to be able to give off that. So it gets tricky in that regard. But this time we're lucky, because with the bunghole, it kind of makes it a little easier. We're gonna have to crack the top. Yeah, we can't shake the cigars out. With one or two cigars, you can kind of put them in there through the bunghole to test. But to do the whole batch would take 2 years doing it that way. So we're gonna have to crack it. But when we crack it, it'll be much fresher than it would be normally when we do this.
Right, and also on top of that, it's being aged and finished. We'll use those terminology in Miami. So there is an element of that barrel actually does stay a little bit longer because it's hot and humid down there. So there is some there. But it's funny, when I went to go visit the warehouse one time and I saw our barrel there, right, it still smells, but it lost a lot of the potency, because Terence is like, you put your head in there. I almost got drunk just putting my head into the barrel, because it's still very, very wet when it got delivered over to the warehouse. So yeah, there's it's interesting to see exactly what goes on here.
you and Yoni were talking at the same time, but I missed what you were saying. So would you mind?
Sure. Yeah. So once you pop that barrel, you need to lose some of that. Like you can't really age it very well when it's that potent off the bat. Like you'll ruin the cigars. It has to lose a little bit of that. But then again, the trick is not losing too much, where then it just won't take on anything from the barrel, and it's basically a waste. So it's very tricky. You have to really time it right, because either way, the cigars are soaked in booze, and again, it's not enjoyable, or they don't take on anything, and you don't really get the experience of how the barrel impacts the flavor. So you have to really watch it. That's why, like I said, I supervise it to a degree that I don't supervise anything because of that, thin margin of error.
Well, listen, Terence, Yoni, thank you both again for joining. This has been awesome. I've learned so much about cigars. I thought I knew a little bit, and it's been confirmed. I only knew a little bit, but now I know a little bit more. And I'm really excited for this project. I want to thank you, Terence, and Aganorsa Leaf, of course. This is now our fourth project, and I'm really excited to get a little bit of peat going on with this smoke, some of the sweetness from the American single malt, and then, of course, thanking our partners, our longtime partners of Two Guys Cigars. And then I want to add in here for our viewers, because our listeners can't see this because they're only listening. They can't listen with their eyeballs. They can only listen with their ears. But where is it? There it is. We still have a few bottles of our Balcones peated First Fill X bourbon bottle left. $85 a bottle. So if you head on over to singlecastnation.com, you want to grab a bottle of this, and then grab a box of this cigar when it comes out. I think it's going to be the perfect pairing. Terence will make sure that we get you a bottle. Yoni will make sure that we get you a bottle, of course. And then I think the three of us, Jason doesn't smoke cigars, so he's going to be the odd man out. So I think the three of us need to get together, have some Balcones, have some cigars, and have a night. I think that's in order.
I'll give a shout out. I'll give a shout out to Terence. Is that the New England Expo is actually next weekend. He'll be up there. You can go annoy him all you want. It is sold out, but there are two really cool in-store events that he's doing along with other cigar makers. So if you want to meet,
what's the date on that, Yoni?
That's the Expo is the 12th and the 13th, but I believe there's some events on the 11th. It's a whole weekend of fantastic stuff. So it's twoguyscigars.com. You can see all the in-store events that he's doing. Obviously, you and I are going to do a quick hit and go to Terence as well. It's a very, very big event. If you have tickets, great. You know what to expect. If you don't, obviously you could try again next year. It usually sells out within a week or two. But there are pre-events and some post-events for all the cigar makers, the representatives, that people could talk about the tobacco and various brands will be up there. It's Two Guys' largest event they do annually. I forgot what number this year is for them. But if you want to learn more about Aganorsa and kind of the project and what we do and all that stuff, definitely go up there and talk to them. They are incredible people to work with and like the nicest individuals ever. So, yeah.
Beauty. All right. Well, cheers to you guys. I've finished my whiskey, so I'll cheers to you with an empty glass.
Well, I got mine full.
Thank you both again.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Huge thanks to Yoni. Huge thanks to Aganorsa in general, everyone at Aganorsa, to Terence, to the whole team for the years of collaboration.
Agreed.
It's been special, and of course we want to thank our good friends at Two Guys Cigars. That's a retail partner.
Yep.
We've been working with them since the very beginning. That's the only place in which you'll be able to get these cigars. And when they are available, because they aren't available just yet, when they are available, we'll be letting everybody know on this podcast, on our Facebook page, on all of our social medias, on YouTube, all the places that, hey, they're available.
That's it. Yeah, excited for third collaboration with it. First 2 rounds, very well received. Really excited to see where this Balcones takes these cigars.
Yeah, I really hope, as I'm nosing this, I'm hoping what I'm getting on this nose, this sort of mezcal, sort of sweet vegetal quality comes through. You've got that Nicaraguan tobacco that always has sort of a spicy element. There's a spicy quality that I think comes through on the palate. I hope that sort of increases.
Yeah. I think the minerality will do well. That kind of vegetal component will do well. I do remember it's one of the questions we got when a rye cask was going to be involved. Like, would it become too spicy? And the rye cask cigars certainly did not get too spicy. There was that nice kind of brown spice from the rye behind it. So, they know what they're doing at Aganorsa. I trust them implicitly.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Oh, man. Well, I think I'm going to make this Balcones last for the rest of the day. Is there anything that we need to say before we get out of here, Jason?
Actually, at the start of the episode when we talked about six-pack, and I said, I really want to hear from the listeners and the viewers on this one. Viewers obviously have comments below, but listeners, info@singlecastnation.com. How familiar are you with the six-pack Kenny Rogers vehicle? I'd also say for comments below and also at info, were you part of the first couple of collaborations with Aganorsa Leaf? Right? Did you have a chance? Were they sold out by the time you got to them? They've sold very well. They've been very well received. And so, yeah, I would love to hear there as well. So, we always pitch this as a two-way conversation. We love name dropping. We love seeing people talking about the nicknames that we give people along the way. Tom Jadelka, longtime listener, crafted his own podcast name in a Zoom the other night. Tom
Namerkin. Tom Namerkin.
Tom Namerkin. Fantastic.
I love it.
Really
I love
fantastic. it. This is always two-way, right? We always love to hear from you. Love to be able to quote you if we can. Don't be a stranger. Be in the comments. Be at info@singlecastnation.com. And be sure to subscribe.
Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to add before we get out of here. I think this is really important, especially for those who are cigar smokers and those who may be cigar smokers first, who may not have picked up this Balcones. There are still bottles of this Balcones available. There's
beauty.
The bottle itself, right?
Real beauty.
It's all first fill bourbon cask matured. It is a peated American single malt. I think that there may be, I don't know, just a few dozen left, maybe 2 to 3 dozen of these bottles left. I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm sort of taking a number from the sky there. But there weren't too many bottles to begin with, about 150. So grab a bottle or 3 while you can, and when the cigars come out, pair that cigar with the whiskeys. See what happens, right?
Yeah. And I would also say, looking at the bottle right now, if you're listening to this episode on the day of launch, singlecastnation.com has its Labor Day sale going on. So don't be a stranger over there. Go to singlecastnation.com, save some money on a host of bottles. Go grab them, fill your carts, get them shipped out. That Balcony is well worth your attention. We got a lot of things on the website well worth your attention. So please, if you're in America, go over to singlecastnation.com. Treat yourself. Jason and Joshua say you're worth it.
You're good enough. You're smart enough. Gosh darn it. People like you.
That's it. That's exactly correct. I expect to learn that lesson in the Kenny Rogers vehicle 6-pack.
Finally, for our viewers who may not have subscribed already, for our listeners who've yet to start viewing, or maybe you watch YouTube in general and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the button below, click the little bell below, subscribe. We have the podcast here. We have tasting videos. We just released 8 new tasting videos for our retail range.
Indeed.
So that's something you're going to want to view. We'd love to have you here. We love your comments, and we respond to every comment. So let's make this a community. Let's grow this community, and we'll leave it there.
That's it. Spread the good word. Come join us in the nation. It's a lovely place to be. Cheers, Joshua.
Cheers, Jason.